Those against the minutes? Those abstaining from the minutes? 2 abstentions at the back. 3, is it? Okay, 3 abstentions. Thank you very much indeed. Announcements. This is the last scheduled full council meeting before the next election. So hopefully I won't have to be in the hot seat anymore till I perhaps hope to return. So we'll just leave it like that. Thank you. So it's item 4 now to the declarations of interest. What members wish to record declarations? At the back over there, there's Councillor Richard Dawes. Richard.
Hi, thanks. In terms of declaration of interest, I'd just like to raise the declaration of interest that I had pointed out in the summer of last year, and I've questioned twice, and asked for clarification from the monitoring officer. He suggested I had a pecuniary interest and that was a criminal offence in terms of partaking in the meeting. I asked him at the last full council meeting to put that in writing. He's refused to do so. Similarly, in terms of declarations of interest, at the last meeting, Councillor Patch put forward a declaration of interest, and the monitoring officer suggested he needed to put that request in 2 days prior to the meeting. That's not correct. He didn't hold a pecuniary interest. In terms of my interest, the monitoring officer referred to Section 33 of the Localism Act, but he actually meant to refer to Section 28, which allows the council to widen the definition of disclosable pecuniary interests for the purpose of the council's own code of conduct. That includes unpaid directorships, but it does not change the definition in Section 34 of the offences, which is determined by Section 30, which states, for this chapter, a pecuniary interest, a disclosable pecuniary interest in relation to the person, is if a description in the regulation is made by the Secretary of State and if the interest of the person is relevant to the regulation. The pecuniary interest, which are described in Chapter 7 of Part 1 of the Act, are interests that are specified in the column of the section of these regulations. The second column does not include. Mr. Woodhead seems to imagine that the council can change the definition of the pecuniary interest and create a new criminal offence. The intention of the intention of the Localism Act is to criminalise certain actions which are real pecuniary interests. So I would like the monitoring officer either to substantiate in writing his definition of pecuniary interest in the directorship I hold in the not-for-profit Newton Abbot Alexandra Theatre Community Benefit Society, or issue a full and unreserved apology. Thank you.
Thank you for the declaration of interest. As I see a direct declaration of interest, you just declare what your interest you believe to be, and then you run the gauntlet whether anybody makes a complaint against you or not. That's as I see it, and no doubt you'd want to respond to me.
Yes,
to that.
Yes, I will, because I'm raising a point of order, and it's a very clear defamation of my character to suggest that I am conducting a criminal act by partaking in a meeting. The monitoring officer knows, because he's been written to with legal definitions, that he's misrepresenting those interests, and he continues to do so. If he continues to do so without correcting it, I will have to assume he's doing it with malicious intent, and that's a very serious claim. But I've asked him since last June to retract and correct the record. I asked him one final time to issue a full and unreserved apology.
Since you've...
It's noted.
It's Managing Director tells me that it's noted. We've noted your complaint. So I'm going to move on, Richard, from that. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a note that on item 7, I may have a declaration of interest there. I'm about to start my role as governor on the NHS South Devon and Torbay Foundation Trust. which I note actually is missing from the people that we should be writing to on that motion, but I will mention that at the time.
Well, I'm pleased you're here today with everything going on, because if you're going to be our representative of the trust, what's happening today is very important. So thank you for raising that declaration of interest. And members of the public, you now know who our representative is. It's Councillor McGregor on that point. So thank you very much for that declaration of interest. So we move on to item 5, which is public questions. Are there any public questions?
There are no public questions.
There are no public questions. Right, I'm going to, at this point, change the order just to 2 items. As we got so much interest here from about Teignmouth Hospital, we don't want to take you through the whole of our budget account. You're very welcome to stay, but I'm going to switch item 7 around with item 6, so we can have a long and informed debate about the budget without the pressure of keeping you all here and trying to hurry the budget through because of the fact you're waiting to hear the Teignmouth Hospital item. So we'll turn item 6 around with item 7. So we'll go to item 7, which is, of course, the recommendation from the executive of the 7th of February, the notice of motion of the closure of Teignmouth Hospital. So you've seen what's on the agenda and written, what we intend to do, recommended to the chair, items 1, 2, 3 and 4, and I don't propose to read that out. So we'll go to Councillor Connett, who the leader, to propose this motion. Alan.
Thank you, Chairman. The executive considered it. What I'm going to do, if I may, is just formally move the recommendations, allow others who I know wish to speak, and I reserve my right to reply at the end to summate. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Seconded for that, Councillor Dewhurst, thank you very much indeed for seconding that. Now we go to people who would like to speak on it. David. Is it back over there? Got his hand up. Councillor David Cox, over to you.
Thank you very much. I hope we have a unanimous vote for this motion today. We will be taking it to Devon County Council. I would like to pay tribute to the people of Teignmouth and the surrounding villages who have not let this matter go and have kept the good fight up. And I think at last we are seeing a glimmer of hope. We're not out of the woods yet, but we have a glimmer of hope. It's not for reasons, and I've probably rehearsed saying this again, it's not for reasons of emotion or tradition. It's because Teignmouth Hospital has a clear medical need. And it's ever so obvious now that a third of patients it's a terrible term, it's a vile term, it's a victim blaming term, are bed blocking. And this is causing massive problems from the queues of ambulances at the hospital. And the answer is very simple. There is already a place in Teignmouth Hospital that they heat to keep the fabric of the building. We've got a wonderful League of Friends at Teignmouth, and that's where sentiment and does play a role. The community will rally round and defend and help Teignmouth Hospital succeed. And the League of Friends is prepared to put money in to help save Teignmouth Hospital and make it a place. There's room at Teignmouth Hospital for GPs. There's room for possibly dental. We are looking at all the options. But I mean, we need to save Teignmouth Hospital. I think it's already all been said, and I hope people will give this motion a unanimous support. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Chair. And thank you for moving this up the agenda. I think it's really important to get this heard. One of the things that I did notice when I was reading through the notice of motion and the recommendations was that Torbay and South Devon NHS Foundation Trust CEO and Chair were missed off the list of people to write to. And I think I would like to propose an amendment that they are included in the round robin of people to write to.
in number 1, I'm told.
Are they? Right. I think the CEO's not included there, but thank you, the Chair.
Clarity, Chairman. I just need the microphone if I may. It's recommended to full council that 1. The council asks the managing director to write to the chairs and chief executives of the Torbay and South Devon NHS Foundation Trust, Devon Clinical Commissioning Group, the relevant members of Parliament and the Secretary of State for Health, asking for a review of the hospital closure plans, mindful of the pressures on local acute hospitals through delayed discharges to other appropriate provision. And then it goes on, Chairman, the Council contact the Chair of Devon County Council's Health and Adult Social Care Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Randall Johnson, requesting the committee write to the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care to ask for a review of the planned closure of Teignmouth Hospital. 3, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, that's Teignbridge's, to consider undertaking a review of the closure of cottage hospitals in the district. And 4, the Council write to the Chair of the Integrated Care System for Devon, Dr Wollaston, and the Chief Executive of the Integrated Care System, Ms J Milligan, and the Regional Medical Director and Higher Level Responsible Officer for the South Region of the NHS England, Dr N Aitchison, to ask for a review of Teignmouth Hospital closure plans. I think we've tried to be comprehensive in who we write to, Chairman.
That's it.
Councillor Brewer, are you happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't need to have an amendment. Councillor Phil Bullivant, please, microphone.
Thank you. There's no doubt at all that the retention of the hospital at Teignmouth will fulfil the community's needs for that type of facilities. Therefore, I'm very happy as the chair of Oversight and Scrutiny Committee number 2 to say that this will be accepted by that committee for a detailed review, albeit as we're moving into a new election. I'm sure that the ONS will take this up and run with it. I know that everybody thinks the closure of the hospital is the wrong thing to do, and we're very happy to get behind the recommendation that it is reviewed in detail. It has to be retained, it's vital for the community, and therefore we endorse the suggestion and the ideas contained in this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Nutley here needs a mic, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm chair of the Ashburton and Buxley League of Friends, and I fully support this notice of motion. I know what we went through at the time in trying to save our hospital. I know we lost the 10 inpatient beds, but we have now turned that into a fantastic hub, thanks to Tracy Cunningham, who is the sister. But as I say, it was unfortunate we lost the beds, but as I say, it's hopefully we can save Teignmouth Hospital, but I fully support this totally. Thank you.
Councillor Nina Jeffries here.
Thank you. It's vitally important to retain services like Teignmouth Hospital. I think anybody that's had to use healthcare over the last few years will know how important it is to a community to be able to access something close to them. People shouldn't have to be travelling over 20 minutes to get to services that they need for basic levels of healthcare. And especially when there are sites like Teignmouth Hospital that are easy to access and can offer services locally. I think where community hospitals are removed, there's greater strain to deliver what's needed on the whole community. And we're already seeing that with our services at the moment. Shrinking healthcare services and our populations where they're ageing, such as in this area, are a recipe for disaster. And link that to other limited bus services, our poor roads, people having a lack of income, and we've got a system that's completely failed its people. We've seen in other towns across the district and beyond that the impact of closing community hospitals have, and I really hope that we can retain the hospital in Teignmouth for its people.
Are there any other speakers wishing to speak on this? You want to sum up in a second. Right, I'd like to speak. You don't need to bring me a microphone. I've got one here. Right, thank you very much. Yeah, I've been right behind this campaign, and it's lovely to hear such measures of support from councillors speaking today. I would like to comment on item 2, when which we've asked to you, which you've heard. And this is about contacting Devon County Council's Health and Adult Social Care Scrutiny Committee, of which Sarah Randall Johnson is the lead councillor on that committee, chair of it. We've had this before, and I don't know what went wrong. The minutes, if you look at the minutes, it said it should have been examined on all relevant matters, yet it wasn't. It was, seems to me this is putting right a correction, and hopefully that committee this time can be persuaded to do it again and do what they should have done in the first place, examine it on all relevant matters, which they didn't do. We've made it specifically clear this time that we wanted to see it examined on the medical grounds, the medical evidence for keeping it open. So hopefully Devon County Council, when it gets there, will put matters right and correct what I see was a faux pas. I was always taught by the late Arthur Bladen, look at the minutes and what have you, if you want confirmation of things to be done. And it seems to me that Devon County Council produced those minutes and then didn't make sure that things were done on what they said they would do it on. But I'm speaking rather passionately now, so I'm going to shut up, and hopefully we'll get a unanimous vote. Councillor Connett now wants to speak on this to wind it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm grateful to you and colleagues for all of their comments and supporting the motion to protect and save Teignmouth Hospital. It's often said, Chairman, that we don't know what we've lost until it's gone. And while I suspect no one will mourn the passing of COVID when it's finally defeated, or some of the diseases of years ago having been defeated by medical science, I think it's certainly true that our estate in Devon of community hospitals has been unloved and left to decline over a number of years. And I can recall in the 1990s, the NHS, for example, investing in new hospitals, albeit in other places at Honiton, Archie St Mary, Tiverton, Oakhampton, Dawlish, for example. But here in Teignmouth, it's often said that this is the first hospital in the NHS, and it provides real service to its local community, but it's been allowed to decline. But we know that in our main hospitals, there is an acute pressure on beds because there is a shortage of people to provide domiciliary care at home. And this is creating a problem in our acute hospitals. And this is leading on to delays in ambulances being able to discharge into hospitals themselves. There is a virtuous circle that people who have received their acute care can then go somewhere else into another NHS facility before they perhaps go home or into whatever longer-term care may be provided. And yet that link seems to be missing, it seems to be unloved. In fact, it seems to be something that the NHS is turning its back on. But the community is right. They know and love Teignmouth Hospital. As colleagues have said today, the League of Friends is there, dynamic, raising money, wanting to give its money to the NHS to support Teignmouth Hospital. Not another hospital in another place, but to support Teignmouth people and the people who would rely on Teignmouth Hospital. If I have any regret whatsoever, is that this council is perhaps being late to the campaign. I think in part because the NHS is not ordinarily a matter for this council. It is Devon County Council, as you described, Chairman. And there's others who have the power to make the decisions to keep Teignmouth Hospital open. But I think it was entirely right of colleagues to present the motion to council and ask us at this 11th hour to do something which may only be a series of letters to those people who are in power and have the ability to make the decision that's important to Teignmouth. But if we don't do it now, then I suspect the moment will be lost, Chairman. So in order to demonstrate to the NHS and to government and to Devon County Council that this council is, on this issue, if nothing else, united, I'm going to ask for a recorded vote so that the managing director, when he writes to the NHS, can say unanimously, this council was united in its support of Teignmouth and Teignmouth Hospital, and I invite those to stand who wish a recorded vote. Thank you.
I think you've got more than 5 there. You got more than 5 there, right? Right, we'll go to the vote then, if we may. Are you ready to do a vote, Trish?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Councillor Austin. Councillor Bradford. Councillor Bullivant. Councillor Colclough. Councillor Connett. Councillor David Cox. Councillor Hugh Cox. Councillor Dawes. Councillor Dewhurst. Councillor Evans. Councillor Foden. Councillor Goodman-Bradbury. Councillor Haynes. Councillor Hocking. Councillor Hook. Jackie Hook. Councillor Jeffries. Councillor Keeling. Councillor McGregor. Councillor Malone. Councillor Nutley. Councillor Parker. Councillor Peart. He's not here. Councillor Phipps. Not present. Councillor Purser. Councillor Rollison. Councillor Swain. Councillor Taylor. Councillor Wrigley. And yourself, Chair.
That's carried unanimously.
Well, that concludes that item. That's the strongest message that we can possibly send when you get a united vote from a council. And thank you, members, for on behalf of, as chairing it, for making it unanimous. It's been a personal battle of mine, as you know, and I'm absolutely thrilled about the result. So I think we'll have a brief pause to let members go, because they may not wish to, that came about this particular item. We'll have a brief pause to let them out of the room, and etc., unless they particularly want to stay on and hear about the budget. So we'll let them go, I think. Well, thank you, members, for allowing me to get that one out of the way. It's lovely to see such unanimity about this, and so many people so happy, so thank you very much. Right, let's move to the budget now, which is item 6, isn't it? Just having swapped them around. Right, executive member is Councillor Keeling for this, who's going to get going. So over to you, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colleagues, I present the reports to you today for your consideration in relation to the final financial plan proposals 2022-23 to 2025-26. The information is set out in appendices 1 through to 16 in your papers. Colleagues, can I first pay tribute to our staff who have contributed to the savings and income generation made especially our Chief Financial Officer and his team for preparing this final financial plan proposal for your consideration. Colleagues, as you're aware, we had the initial budget briefing in January with all the relevant committees giving councillors the chance to input. We have now consulted on the final budget proposal with both overview and scrutiny committees, audit scrutiny and executive committee this month. We have also consulted with town and parish councils in 2 meetings, one in December 2022 and one in January 2023, as well as running the 6-week public consultation with Teignbridge residents. I have had many emails and conversations with councillors on the details, and I'm pleased to say we are listening and we acted where we can. On the public consultation, 1,036 people responded to the survey. This was 3 times the normal amount in previous years. What was interesting was that the survey question on balancing the budget in the future, 78.33% agreed we should be generating more income to reinvest in council services. 34.71% agreed we should be making more budget savings. 8.43% agreed we should be reducing the services we provide. We will not be doing that. 23.4% agreed we should be increasing council tax further, and we certainly won't be doing that. Colleagues, I would like to highlight the key parts of our budget. Working with our Chief Financial Officer and his team, we have a balanced, fully costed budget using earmarked reserves. We are proposing an increase in the council tax to £5.54 on Band D, which is at 2.99%, well below inflation. Colleagues, we have spent a lot of time on how can Teignbridge help our residents with the cost of living crisis, with those who are struggling the most, so that we are planning to give back to those households the Teignbridge share of the council tax increase. Only a small part of the council tax everyone pays comes to Teignbridge Council. In fact, this year, it'll be closer to 8% of the whole amount collected. The rest goes to Devon County Council, the police and fire services, and local town and parishes. The proposed increase for Teignbridge Council for a Band D home is £5.54 for the whole year. That's about 11 pence a week. We all know these are hard times, with prices rising, inflation now still over 10%, and so many people struggling. So we hope that by giving back this £5.54 to every eligible household whose main home is in Teignbridge on the 1st of April 2023, in a single payment, we are doing our small bit to help those many people who are finding things particularly tough. This way, we will be supporting residents, but still, importantly, helping to maintain key council services into the future. We have dealings with reduced central government funding and the need to make ongoing efficiencies using invest to save where possible. We have already pledged to maintain the 100% council tax support. To be clear, if you're on a low income, you will get 100% relief on your council tax. Colleagues, I reiterate, in our budget, we are supporting our 3 key aims: climate emergency, homes and jobs. We are continuing to react to the climate change emergency by maintaining ongoing budgets for our climate change officer and associated spending, temporary staffing resources in revenue and provision in the capital programme, including ongoing provision for corporate decarbonisation schemes. Our Teignbridge 100 housing scheme for affordable social housing continues with a provision of 8.5 million made over 3 years for phase 1. The Teignbridge 100 housing scheme is benefiting those residents who are desperate to stay in Teignbridge, giving families hope. Teignbridge 100 has delivered and continues to deliver much needed modern council homes for local residents. Of the 21 homes delivered to date, we have now new warm flats and family homes. In Chudley, this coming week, we are handing over the keys to a newly refurbished bungalow to a local resident who has freed up a 3-bedroom home for a local family. And we have a new temporary accommodation in the district, much more suitable rather than the bed and breakfast when a family has an emergency housing need. And we have another 24 homes coming along in due course. We have also been working with local housing associations to increase their delivery of much needed homes, and we look forward to delivering more new council homes around the district in our towns and villages. Colleagues, we are also providing a 2 million provision for employment sites funded by prudent borrowing, supporting jobs and business. A business case will be brought forward from the Economic Development Team to members for consideration once it is finalised. 2023, colleagues, will see over 20 acres of employment land coming forward in Teignbridge. 16 acres is planned by the commercial developers. The remaining smaller sites have been purchased by indigenous businesses who are seeking new bespoke buildings and the opportunity to own the freehold of their workplace. The Economic Development Team are working closely with developers and applicants in an effort to find the right location for both. Colleagues, we are continuing our town centre investment in infrastructure and employment. We are re-establishing revenue contribution to capital, initially at 300,000 per annum, and our intention is to increase to 500,000 in the following years. Charges at Newton Abbot indoor and outdoor market retailers continue to be frozen after having been reduced previously. And I am making a commitment for 4 years to keep all car parks free after 6 p.m. Although this budget is for the 2023-24, supporting the nighttime economy of our towns, and we will freeze Sunday parking charge at £1 for the whole day. Leisure membership fees and pre-application planning charges have also been frozen. Fees and charges will go up other than those just mentioned at around 5%, less than half of inflation, due to again cover increases in cost due to inflation. This will also help towards increasing card payment charges and rates increase arising from the revaluation that mostly affects our car parks. We have also set aside a provision for emergency planning officer. Colleagues, the estimated revenue budget gap was 3.6 million, but now has been reduced to 3.4 million in the 2025, 26 and ongoing gaps before the use of remaining earmarked reserves. We will take action required to address this, including establishing working groups to inform, overview and scrutiny 1 and 2 on work to reduce the gap. To address the work required, there will be temporary funds for a scrutiny officer to assist members with the scrutiny function and the working groups. And I will work with providing information to those working groups to achieve our goals. We will also be supporting a digital transformation manager and other temporary resources to facilitate the modern 25 work. This work was started with the Ignite undertook. Colleagues, we are continuing to support enhanced planning funding. Councillors' Community Fund for 2023-24 will be set at £1,000 each, reduced from £1,200. And we will be given the opportunity, continuing the cost of living crisis, we are continuing to support our partners in the volunteering sector, CVS, CAB and Newton Abbot Community Transport, etc. We've also set aside a provision of £20,000 for the year 2 of the Tidy Teignbridge initiative, which will continue to improve the cleanliness for our towns and parish councils. And as agreed last year, we paid off £1 million of the pension fund. This made a saving of £80,000. We are also proposing repaying a further £500,000 in 2023-24 to reduce the overall deficit, driving down the past deficit contributions and providing returns which will be utilised to support the cost of living payment in 2023-24. We are still in an uncertain climate, so we will be increasing our general reserves to 2.3 million from previously a 2 million. These proposals included draft revenue and capital budgets for the 3 years 2023-24 to 25-26. Mr. Chairman, I therefore propose that this council accepts the budget proposals as set out from A to N. Our Chief Financial Officer and Head of Corporate Services and I are available for any questions that you may have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's seconded by the leader, Councillor Connett. So it goes to the floor for debate. Councillor Phil Bullivant, if you can take the mic.
Thank you for the explanation on the budget. It is a valedictory budget in the sense that this is the final year of this council. And therefore I think it's appropriate to consider what we've achieved over the last 4 years and see what this budget says. There are claims in this budget which I think are interesting. I think if you look at the history, there are things that we're leaving to the next council, such as a 3.4 million black hole in the accounts that are certainly not addressed through any of the actions within this budget. It's one heck of a legacy that we leave for the next council. We're handing out to every household the price of a McDonald's Happy Meal. The £300,000 that that's costing the council, only 42% of the people who voted said that was the right thing to do. They wanted to invest in jobs and creating the wealth and the income for the people here as a preference. Last year there was a £2 million fund created to invest in these activities. That's repeated this year. Last year none of that was spent. This council has a poor record of delivery. If you look at the capital programme, it's littered with projects that have been there for a great number of years but not brought to fruition. Whether it be the town centre developments, the investments in the leisure centres, the investments in the towns that we have. If you look at the investments that have been made, the closure of Teignbridge Lido last year throughout the summer, the hottest summer on record. If you look at the failure to invest in Dawlish with the growth of people there and the need for additional leisure facilities, all of those funds were in the budgets and have been in the budgets for a number of years, but we have not delivered against them. The critical thing, however, is how we address the 3.4 million black hole that's looming in the accounts. And out of interest, looking at the other 8 councils, district councils in Devon, and looking how they have performed over that same period, Teignbridge stands out. We've used more of our reserves over the last 4 years than any other council in Devon. We have the biggest black hole in our accounts. We're the only council for the next year's budget that hasn't identified where savings or income generation could take place. We rely entirely on taking out of our budgets the reserves that we have, or spending our reserves at a higher rate than any other council in Devon. This certainly is a valedictory budget. I know leaders of the controlling Lib Dem group are not standing in elections. I wish them well in their future careers and lives. But this certainly is not a budget that I think that would look back on with any pleasure at all. We need better. We have to accept the challenges that the economy presents, and we have to move forward and make sure that the children of this district are not burdened with the sort of debts that we're building up as we move forward. Action should have been taken, needs to be taken, and will be taken by future council. Thank you.
The next speaker is
Mr. Chairman, if I can reply to that, because that was quite extensive.
yes, okay, we'll take that reply.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, it's a bit rich coming from the leader of the Conservatives, his party in government, where over the past 12 years we've had reduced funding from central government to the extent that we are having to go out there and look at how we raise money within Teignbridge. And he mentioned just one thing, the Lido there, the refurbishment money that's been spent on the Lido Yes, we couldn't open it in time in the last 2 weeks of the season, but what we actually did with the money that we saved from that, we gave that over £5,000 to each of our 6 swimming pools within our district. So I think he's been disingenuous with what this administration has done. The refurbishments of the leisure centres, the decarbonisation of those, as well as Ford House. We put forward a green plan to come out of a Conservative administration that wasn't delivering. We are delivering. We're delivering on so many of those aims. And he talks about the £2 million. I think he wasn't listening to me when I was explaining how that £2 million for jobs and the economy, the reason why it wasn't spent last year was there wasn't any need to. This is money that we are actually would borrow. It's not money that we have set there because of the reduced government funding that we get. We're having to borrow that £2 million to invest. But I've clearly set out in 2023 with the 20 acres of employment land coming forward, and also a report coming to us. But can I also say, I mean, we are dealing with this budget deficit in 2025-26 by involving all councillors, and especially Councillor Bullivant's overview and scrutiny too, and providing extra officer help to work together to bring this deficit down with the ideas. So I would hope that he's going to be involved with us in doing that, rather than him kicking it into the long grass. We're taking action now. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Right, it's Councillor Mike Hocking next, then David Cox.
Thank you, Chairman. I find myself in a little awkward position. I'm actually agreeing on some parts with Councillor Bullivant.
Thank you.
That's quite all right. But actually, if we go back a few years when the Conservatives were in power, they used 3 years of government grants in order to keep our council tax down to 0. We're now paying for that, because part of the problem they had then was that they could not foresee the fact that there was a black hole starting to appear. And we have that black hole now. Even though Councillor Keelan said you're going to look at it in 25-26, that black hole is there now. I also find myself unable to support this budget, because at the end of the day, I feel that as an elector, not as a councillor, but as an elector, I am being conned by this by this Lib Devon administration and electioneering. I will still be paying the increase of £5.24, even though they are giving it back to me as a one-off payment, funny enough, just before the election, sometime in April. That will be very nice, thank you. That will give me an extra couple of pints down at Wetherspoons, or go for a meal at McDonald's. All joking aside, there is a hole. Sorry, where are they getting this money from to pay us back the £5.24 that they're putting the council tax up? They're getting it back from a saving they say they're making on paying their part of the pension, or employees' pension. All employers have a legal obligation to make sure they're paying enough money into pension funds in order to keep those funds afloat. We've already been told there's a black hole in the pension fund. We know for a fact that Devon County has an even bigger hole in their part of the pension fund. So at the end of the day, we're going to only give 500,000 into the pension this year. We're going to keep the other, and I believe it's 300 odd thousand, to pay for this little handout just before the election. I really do feel as though the people out there aren't that silly. The people who will be electing this new council, and by the way, I shan't be standing either. I've done 20 years on this council and 25 years on town council. And I really do feel that this has been the worst 4 years of my political career within Teignbridge. Basically because of the infighting and the childness of some of the people within this chamber. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the budget. I cannot support it, and I will not be supporting it, because I feel it is an election budget for an election year to try and get people back. And I think it's all wrong that they should be playing this with finances that we will need in the coming years. We've already been told that they'll be in 25, 26. We'll look at it. We need to be looking at it now. We need to be putting our house in order now, not then.
Councillor Keating would like to respond to that. He thinks that might be...
I'd just like to clarify, maybe Councillor wasn't listening to my report to the Council, that the additional £1 million last year and the 500,000 this year is additional to what we're paying into the pension pot. And we've made a saving because of that of £80,000 last year, and we intend to make a saving this year. So it's increasing that provision to pay off the pension pot. So I do believe that what the councillor said is incorrect, and please listen to what I've said.
If I can come back.
Briefly. It's good healthy debate.
It's a good, healthy debate. Thank you, Chairman, for letting me come back. Yes, I do understand pensions. I have been a pension trustee, so I do know how it works. You are committed to fill the black hole that the pension fund has. Okay, you've put in £1 million last year and £500 this year, and you say you've made a saving. You're only putting back in to what other administrations have not paid in, not taken, not paid in over the years. So I do know how it works, but it is still, you still are not filling that black hole that exists in the pension.
Hands are going up everywhere, but Alan, the leader, would like to respond to this, and I think this is just about this.
Thank you. I do implore councillors not to confuse the pension, and certainly not to suggest the council has not paid what it is due to pay in previous years, whatever administration of any colour or none. There are many reasons why there's a deficit on the pension fund. You can go all the way back to Margaret Thatcher's government and the requirement of councils to underfund. You can look at the fact that members of the pension fund are living longer and drawing pensions longer, and the actuarial valuations change. You can look at the way investments work and the returns that are received by the pension fund. What the council has done, and members may recall when the council housing stock was sold, we made a £1 million contribution to balance the pension for those members of staff who then worked in the housing service. We've continued to make single one-off annual payments on occasions, last year and proposed for next year, to help meet the deficit. In doing that, it improves or reduces the extra we would have to pay as part of our revenue budget, and that's where the saving comes from. And finally, Chairman, just for the clarity, I'll come back to the politics of it later, but just for the clarity, Councillor Hocking is right. Obviously, this council is increasing council tax just to avoid the very issue that he was talking about, because if we don't, we lose it from the base budget. And that generates the council tax income, which is being refunded and topped up. So it's money that is being paid by our residents, being paid back to residents, because financially, the Chief Finance Officer advises us that's the best way to help residents, which is what the administration wants to do, and to ensure that the council has the ongoing benefit of that money long term, and we don't lose it just in the way that he described when we used to get council tax grants from the government, but it was actually lost from the base. Thank you, Chairman.
I did note Richard at the back, but I'm coming now to Martin Flitcroft, because he can put a little bit of officer clarity to this bit of the debate. So, Martin?
Yeah, sorry, just to touch on the issue around the pension fund. So the way that it works is that Devon County revalue, if you like, the liability within the pension fund every 3 years, and within that they prescribe what we've got to pay every year for the next 3 years. And it's a bit like paying off your mortgage. If you pay more quicker, then you'll get a better return. So we've got these prescribed rates that we pay every year for 3 years, but on top of that, in certain years, we paid an extra amount to reduce that overall deficit. We've got the plan with the county council is to reduce that deficit over the next 18 years and eliminate it. And so these payments that we make are projected based on actuary valuations to do that. So I just thought there's a bit of clarity there about what we are doing statutorily and voluntarily. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin, for that bit of a clarity there to the debate. I've got 3 more councillors, and I'm not trying to hurry anything along at all, and everybody should have their say. We've got Councillor David Cox, Councillor Andrew McGregor, and Councillor Richard Dawes. So it's over to anybody else can put up their hand, catch my eye. For the moment, it's over to Councillor David Cox.
It's worth noting that a third of all council across the country, a third of all council leisure facilities have been closed because of the cost of living crisis. None will be closed in Teignbridge. So that's a pretty good achievement that we ought to applaud Councillor Keeling and certainly Councillor Hook for their decarbonisation project. Not only are we a greener council, but we're keeping stuff open for people. And it's great to see the grant scheme to help local businesses get energy, green energy, decarbonised energy. So because we've seen businesses in Teignmouth closing because of energy costs. So we are looking to help our people. And you know, people scoff at the £5 rebate. That is a meal for 5. You know, when you look at poverty, actually, you know, £5 is actually a lot of money for some people.
Right, it's to Councillor Andrew McGregor now over here.
Thank you, Chair. Coming back to one of Councillor Bullivant's points, I particularly around the overspending of reserves, or the highest council for spending reserves. I do recall sitting in a meeting and a presentation with the officer Martin Flitcroft explaining that they were taking a fairly large amount out of reserves to pay off the pension fund when we first started this particular iteration of the council, and that would explain in part why the reserves were in large part used, because it was a mechanism to save money. So, you know, I laud that particular use. In terms of a couple of general points, I do have a concern about we're taking an assumption of a 3% pay rise for staff, bearing in mind that inflation is running at 10.7% at the moment. And it does worry me that that'll make it more difficult to recruit in future. Voluntary grants maintained at the same levels. I'm sure we all received that heartfelt request for extra funds from the Citizens Advice Bureau, and I think when we look at voluntary sector and the support that they're putting in, particularly during this cost of living crisis, I think we should perhaps have looked at maybe some small increase at least for funding for 1 or 2 of those. In terms of the Councillor Community Fund, no problem with that at all. I think a lot of my fellow colleagues in the Chamber have probably not spent as much, but whatever's left in this particular year, perhaps we could consider contributing all of that to the Citizens Advice Bureau to support them, particularly in this time of increased debt advice requirements, evictions, etc., across the district. I think the increase at 2.99% is excellent, because it's well below the cost of living the rate of inflation. It's actually below what we were able to look at. And I think it's an interesting element that in my 4 years as a councillor, I've seen the Teignbridge element of the council tax in percentage terms reduce from over 9% to just over 8%. So our proportion of the collected council tax has reduced steadily over that period of time. And I think that's actually quite a positive for this authority. I think from the last point, I think we should continue to try and pay as much down on the pension to save money in future. And the more we deal with now, the easier that's going to be, particularly in a high rate of inflation period. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. It's now to Councillor Richard Dawes at the back there. Any other councillors? Councillors catching my eye?
Thank you.
Councillor Liam. All right.
Thank you, Chair. So I note Councillor Bullivant's point of littered with failures and not delivered. I suspect that given the business of this council doesn't revolve around 4-year cycles, it's continuous, that those failures spread to previous administrations, so he will shoulder the responsibility for that. I also note his point on making savings whilst the previous vote and big hurrah of this council meeting was to fund the local hospital in Teignmouth. I mean, who wouldn't want a hospital and who wouldn't want one locally? And I note that Councillor Connaught said we came to this late. Surprisingly, we just about got in time before the election. I wonder if any of the Lib Dems or Conservatives could lend us any tabards, because I believe we've got to do the statutory litter picks as part of our campaign. But anyway, the council is in an impossible position. George Osborne put it in that position when he restructured the funding for local councils to make all the motivation based around house building, which is the delivery mechanism that this council has undertaken to sustain, and we understand it's difficult and we understand it's hard. I won't be voting on this point because I've had literally no time to look at the budget, probably singularly the most important point of being a councillor, because this council has trashed my reputation so spectacularly that this week I've been talking to the MPs for Bath, Vera Hobhouse, and the MP for Brighton Pavilion, Caroline Lucas, about the threat that was created to businesses in their wards by the utterly reckless actions of this council, which caused my bank to question if I was a fit and proper person to be doing business with. Something that happened in 2020, something I noted that has not been addressed in the apologies put forward. I note that Councillor Shears, MD Phil Shears' apology, 7 days apology that should have been forthcoming from the council's position last week has not occurred. I suspect the original press release by the council that the council was actually sorry that it got caught by the Ombudsman rather than sorry for what happened is actually the case. So I won't be voting because I've had zero time to look at singularly the most important issue that this council has to look at, because the council has trashed my reputation. Thank you.
Next to him, Councillor Liam Malone.
Thank you. I do agree with some of Councillor Bullivant's points on the way money has been spent. I find it very hard to believe that whichever way you want to cook the books, some of this hole wasn't created with the massive, embarrassingly massive payoffs of yore to the agates and to Bulbeck, all of it engineered by our good friend Jeremy Christophers. If there's a hole, and I believe there is, then I think the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats have done equal spade work on creating it, frankly. In terms of this administration's spending, all I've seen is 4 years of hiring expensive professionals who weren't professional, consultants who weren't real consultants, massive wastage, a decarbonisation plan for Ford House that cost 3 times what it would cost to demolish and rebuild, that has now gone God knows where. A complete mess of the future High Street Fund. Let's face it, you're not going to see that money. And all along, misapplied plans, miscaginated projects, just an absolute mess. But my question today is, 2 weeks ago in the Mid-Devon Advertiser, there was a story in quite triumphal terms that there would be no council tax rise in Teignbridge. So I'm wondering who on this council gave them that story, and does the left hand actually know what the right hand is doing right now?
Right, are there any other speakers before Alan sums up? Right, Alan, it's your turn now.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'm sure I'd rather pick litter than pick fault all the time. In terms of Councillor Bullivant, and yes, it is a valedictory budget for some of us, there's no black hole. There is a balance to be found for the budget looking ahead, and work has been put in place to do that over the past couple of years. Working with the Managing Director and Chief Officers, that's what the Ignite work is about Modern 25, about identifying a new way of working for the Council, and in order to save money to meet the impacts that we're all experiencing. Now, Councillor Bullivant says, and it's very true, to say, look, other councils, they're in a different position in Devon. They're not doing what we're doing with regard to the council tax. No, they're not. But if you look at those councils, those district councils in Devon, what they're doing is a mix of increasing costs, some of them more significantly for us than us. Some of them are increasing their, all of the others are increasing their council tax. But they're not doing what we're doing. They're increasing costs, or their charges, they're increasing their council tax, and they're cutting services to a greater or lesser extent, all of them. It is this council, and this council alone, which is taking the battle on the cost of living crisis to the residents by saying, yes, we need to protect the council's income by increasing the council tax, but we're giving the equivalent of the Band D £5.54 back per year. And on top of that, we are broadly keeping any increases in our charges to an average of 5%. There is no more as a small district council that we can do, but what we are doing is what everyone needs. And some people may scoff and say, 5.54, it's no more than a happy meal, it's no more than a couple of pints in Wetherspoons. But as Councillor Cox said, for very many households, that £5.54 will go some way to help. It won't go far, I appreciate that, but it will go some way to help, and it may be an extra charge on the electricity meter or whatever it might be, but we are standing with the people of Teignbridge. And for those who haven't had the time to read the budget, which I understand, I'd commend it to you, because there are investment programmes in here which support Teignbridge. There's a revenue budget which supports Teignbridge. But I just want to talk about something else, if I may. Last week I was at Devon County Council, and it was their budget meeting. Their budget was approved, with Councillor Bullivant supporting it, with a requirement for 12 million from reserves to support the budget, 4 million from the Public Health Reserve to support the budget, and a requirement to save £47 million. And of course, in the intervening couple of years, and against all the warnings, the County Council has built up a debt of about £100 million on special educational needs, because, in part, they have not been able to manage that demand, and the government underfunds Devon County Council, just in the way that it underfunds this council. There is a financial crisis facing all councils in Devon, which is about the government's decisions on funding to local authorities, and I have to say, the economic crash engineered by Liz Truss in 3 days in this country for us. This budget has gone through overview and scrutiny. Anyone's been able to ask any question about it. And this brings me to a point that I want to just emphasise before I conclude. This budget is not possible without the hard work of all of the council staff and officers, and I want to put on record my thanks to them for all their hard work and diligence and advice they provided. I'm grateful to all of the chief officers and the senior leadership team for what they've done. But also, and it's easy to forget, isn't it, in this 4-year period, that for all of us, we have been blighted in what can be achieved by 2 years of COVID lockdown, precautions around that. I am tremendously proud of the way this council responded to COVID, went out and helped people, went out and contacted the most vulnerable, has been able to maintain the budget for CAB, CVS, for Newton Abbot Community Transport and others. When other councils have been cutting back, we have been steadfast in our support for the community. And this budget is the headline act for a great show which says we understand what our residents and voters and communities feel. Oh, well, people may scoff because it's only £5. People may laugh in the back seats because they may have more money than they know what to do with. But we know poverty faces Teignbridge, and this council is doing the right thing, and I commend this budget to every member. And anyone who abstains, in my view, is abdicating their responsibilities. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, it was Mr. Pickles that decreed that we have a named vote, so no members need to stand. So I think it's time that, as it's been said, it's now put to the vote. Are you ready to do the vote, Trish?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Right, so...
Councillor Austin. Councillor Bradford. Councillor Bullivant. Councillor Colclough. Councillor Connett. Councillor David Cox. Councillor Hugh Cox. Councillor Dawes. Councillor Dewhurst. Councillor Evans. Councillor Foden. Councillor Linda Goodman-Bradbury. Councillor Haynes. Councillor Hocking. Councillor Gordon Hook.
I apologise for missing the opening comments from the PH. As I did so, I didn't hear his comments. I abstained.
Councillor Jackie Hook. Councillor Jeffries. Councillor Keeling. Councillor McGregor. Councillor Malone.
I'd like to abdicate responsibility for anything this executive has touched. Thank you. Abstain.
Councillor Nutley.
4.
Councillor Parker.
4.
Councillor Purser.
4.
Councillor Rollison.
4.
Councillor Swain.
4.
Councillor Taylor. Councillor Wrigley.
4.
And yourself, Chair.
4.
That's carried, Chair.
Point of order, Chair. I believe that two other members missed the opening address by the... Oh, sorry. I believe two other members missed the opening address by the portfolio holder, so I don't think their votes should be noted. Thank you.
I'll just take advice on that. We're being told it was Councillor David Cox and...
I think Councillor David Cox, did you come back in, and Councillor Evans left so that's what I noted.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Sorry, I didn't know. I didn't see Councillor.
Just take a bit of advice here. At the end of the day, apparently we can't stop you voting, is that correct?
Sorry?
That's correct, that it can't stop them voting.
If members weren't part during the whole of the debate, then any decision that they make is challengeable, is flawed, but it's a matter for councillors.
Yeah, it's a matter for councillors. You've voted apparently, so the record shows what you've done. So, I'm sorry that you missed the first part of the debate and what have you, but I think it's a relatively small decision. In the fact that it's only two of you, isn't it? And you've just missed the very opening things. But you've made your decision. You voted. It's up to you. If anybody wants to challenge it, they have the right to do that. Councillor Rain Evans.
Can I just say, all I walked out for was when Councillor Hocking was speaking, and I could hear what he was saying from in the cloakroom.
Okay. You. Councillor. So you did hear it through the walls. Yeah, all right. Yeah, Councillor Bullivant.
Just a point of clarity. Thank you. I understand the decision taken exceeds the number of, if those 3 votes were to be discounted, it didn't make any difference whatsoever. So.
Well, that was my feeling. So there we are. So, yeah, I think we can put that one to bed. Thank you. Let's move on to the next item. It was a good debate and everybody got heard, and I'm glad we let the hospital people, they didn't need to sit through all that, so I feel altering the order, my decision was vindicated. Thank you. It was a very healthy, lengthy debate, and perhaps not all of them would have wanted to sit through that and then move on to the hospital issue, so thank you. Right, now let's move on to the next one. It's the leader to introduce it, and it's item 8. The Community Governance Review for Ogwell Parish. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I believe Councillor Colclough would like to move it, and I'm quite happy to defer to Councillor Colclough if she wishes.
Certainly. Councillor Colclough, please. The mic.
Yes, I'd like to propose that we go along with Ogwell having 2 more councillors for their parish council. The boundary has been extended at Ogwell, but on top of that, they've had considerable amount of development there with Ogwell Brook and other large developments. So I think this is well deserved by the parish council. So I'd like to propose that we go along with having 2 more councillors.
Seconded, Chairman.
Member, I'd like to second that motion.
Yeah, but
I'll second it as well, thank you.
Okay. Right, it's been seconded. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Mary Colclough, for doing that. You've been a stalwart member of that council for years and years, and it's lovely to see you proposing it. Thank you. Right, who actually wanted to speak? Did you want to speak on this, Andrew, or did you? No, that's fine. Thank you. You didn't. Okay. Is there anybody else to speak on it while we go to the vote? I think we can do this by show of hands, can't we? Yep. So all those in favour of that?
That's unanimous.
Anybody? Well, is it unanimous? I'm going to say. Anybody against? Was there any abstentions? So it was unanimous. Thank you. To the next item, which is the item 9, the recommendation from the Strata Joint Executive Committee of the 17th of January 2023, and this is the Deputy Leader to Councillor Alistair Dewhurst to introduce. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So on the 17th of January, the new IT Director of Strata, Mark Davis, introduced their Strata plan, business plan for 23-24, and that was approved by the Strata Joint Executive meeting. So the recommendation before you today is that we in this council approve that business plan so that work can get on and we can get our Modern 25 programme through and can be supported by Strata. Thank you, Chair.
Where's the seconder for that? Martin, Councillor Martin Wrigley, because he attends that. You attend those meetings, don't you? Right. On a humorous note, I was chairman of that for a year in the rotation of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee of Strata, and we never met once in that year in my chairmanship. So there we go.
Chair, this is the Strata Executive.
I understand that, but as chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny position for a whole year, we never met once. So I missed my turn at the chair, as it were. Let's go to the vote on that, please, and unless anybody wants to speak on it. Does anybody want to speak on it? No, right. We go to a vote, and that can be done by show of hands. Those in favour of it, please. Those against, and those abstaining. You got that,
That's
Sarah?
carried, Chair.
Carried. Thank you. I'm very bad at that. My apologies. It's on to item 10 now, the notices of motion. And notice of motion for it, so let's look at that one. It's Councillor Nutley that presented this motion. So is it 2/3 of the council we have to vote if you want to debate that today? He wants to introduce it first. Probably be a good idea, wouldn't it? Right then, away you go.
Thank you, Chairman. I know I'm a Dartmoor National Park member as well, but obviously we've had all these issues with the banning of some areas of the Dartmoor for wild camping and backpacking, as they're classing it as now. I trust everyone's read my notice of motion. Unless you want me to read through it, I would ask you to support that notice of motion, and that this council obviously writes to Dartmoor National Park in support of their appeal against the banning of the wild camping. Thank you.
Seconded there, thank you. So is it the wish that this be debated today? Would you want to speak on that?
Chairman, I think it would be very helpful if it's debated today and Council makes the decision that will enable a letter to go at the earliest opportunity to DMP, for example.
Well, we need 2/3 of the council to vote on that. So by show of hands, if you wish to have it debated today, could you raise your hands? I think is that clearly carried?
Yeah.
That's clearly carried, so have it debated now in front of us. So who's going to, you going to speak more on it now? Do you want to speak more?
I'm fine with what was said.
Councillor Connor.
Chairman, I support the motion. I think very many people were hugely disappointed when the courts decided to effectively ban wild camping on Dartmoor. I think DMP, Dartmoor National Park, are doing great work in trying to recover that and have got an interim position on it. I'd be surprised if anyone in the council is anything other than in support of wild camping and retaining or regaining that right for people to be able to wild camp on Dartmoor. And frankly, I think the motion could probably be put.
Yeah. Councillor Bullivant.
Thank you. I agree that it's an excellent idea to support this motion. The one concern I have, nowhere in this motion does it reflect responsible wild camping. And if we have wild raves, people lighting fires, barbecues and things like that, we just have to be careful what we wish for. And I think we should have something in here which reflects or highlights the need for responsible wild camping as opposed to just wild camping. Thank you.
First here, then Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chair. So I well remember in my childhood, in a very leaky tent, the many weekends that we spent on Dartmoor camping as a family. It gave my family a great love of camping, and in fact led to my parents' long time business in terms of camping. So obviously I will be supporting this. I'm not sure that it really needs any kind of addition to the motion, because I think by definition wild camping is a responsible type of thing. It's better to walk and just leave your footprint when you go, and I think that's what most people on Dartmoor do and would like to continue to do, and I'm glad that I hope this council will be supporting that. Thank you.
So with Councillor Cox, then Councillor Swain.
I agree with the previous councillor. We We don't need to change anything. There already exist bylaws and rules by Dartmoor National Park that prevent basically raves, etc. So it's quite clear. The landowner at the centre of this purchased the estate knowing that wild camping was allowed, and then sought the courts to take away that right. So I think we should give this absolutely our support, and I thank Councillor Nutley for bringing the motion.
Right, Councillor Swain next, please.
Thank you. It's a privilege to support this motion. I've been wild camping with my children since they were tiny. As adults, they now go wild camping with others on Dartmoor. This right was one of the reasons we considered when we moved to the area. I did want to respond to the point about responsible use. I think this is a right which is being attacked and urgently needs to be defended. I think it would be entirely inappropriate to say, we want this right back, but obviously you need to put some things in to make sure that it's responsible. That's not appropriate in the context of this motion. We just need to write in support of the right to camp. Thank you.
Councillor Richard Dawes at the back.
Hi, thank you. I'll not give a big long example of my family using Dartmoor. I think everyone does. It's clearly a motion that we should support. The addition of some sort of hysterical Daily Mail headline of wild, meaning wild in a different context, is not required. Totally ludicrous. It was absolute sham that the High Court passed the appeal that was put forward by the landowner. The case that was put forward by the barrister Timothy Leader will hopefully be appealed, and it's worth noting that Timothy Leader is a barrister that I've worked with. In fact, he was the barrister that advised me that this council had broken the law, the Local Government Act, and breached my human rights, and that was put to the council in December 2020, and they chose to ignore it. So I assume he'll prevail in time as well, and that the wild camping decision will be reversed as well. So I couldn't support this motion any stronger. Thank you.
It's Councillor McGregor over here, please.
Thank you, Chair. With my Scottish heritage, I do find this a little bit of a strange situation anyway. The right to roam is inherent in Scottish law, which is a really interesting comparison with English law. I'm fully in support of this, and I'm not surprised that this council and this authority is fully in support of it, considering 40% of our district is within the national park boundary. It's really important for our residents, it's really important for visitors to the area, it's really, really important for our local economy and our businesses that we don't discourage people from coming down. Those that come down wild camping, I've seen no evidence to show that they are taking advantage, being unpleasant, being antisocial. Most people that come down to Dartmoor are very well behaved people, and they do respect Dartmoor, and I think that, you know, from my perspective, I'm fully behind this motion, and I think it's a really important one for Dartmoor National Park to understand that they are supported by all of the districts around their national park boundary. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Suffice to say, I'd like to have a quick... Councillor Nutley, I want to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one on this. I appreciate everyone's support on this. I'm actually at Dartmoor National Park for a meeting on Friday, and I will pass on the good news to our councillor, Kevin Bishop. Thank you.
Very fond of this motion too myself. I led a team round when I was 18 and on 10 tours, 50 miles in those days. And it's great to be out on Dartmoor doing these sort of things, and so I'm behind it as well. So just for the record, just wanted to make that thing. So if we can go to the vote, please. I think we can do this by a show of hands. All those in favour of the motion, please raise their hands. It was unanimous, as you quite rightly said. Right. So we go on to the next motion. And that's been presented by Councillor Malone, isn't it? Who's it presented by? Councillor Patch and supported by, well, Councillor Patch isn't here to support it.
I think
Councillor Dawes, you'll do it, will you?
Yeah, yes. I thought Councillor Patch had noted that the motion would be spoken to by myself.
Fine, that's fine.
Okay, so I'll just do a brief one-page sort of statement, and then the council can decide whether it wants to debate or vote on the motion. So the Ombudsman found serious faults with the administration in terms of standards cases at this council, concluding the injustice done to myself constituted wider systemic problems. They made the report public due to the public interest. So not just for this council to learn from, but for other councils. So it would be remiss if we didn't learn from it ourselves. Last week's extraordinary meeting was called to consider and address the Ombudsman's findings, but it failed to do so. In particular, it voted to address the systemic problems. The injustices that I have suffered have been mirrored by other serious failings in other cases, and have shone a light on the standards procedure that is not fit for purpose. Teignbridge standards procedure has been abused by senior councillors and officers over a sustained period. The common link between councillors subject to the abuse of power is that they've carried out their roles in debating and challenging and picking fault, not litter, the council's actions. Other abuses of procedures include those made on large-scale planning decisions. Cases needing consideration were outlined in my report to full council delivered at the EGM on the 14th of February, and the bullet point form they contain. The flawed standards proceeding against myself, the same flawed standards proceedings against Councillor Malone, flawed standards proceedings against Councillor Patch, failures to investigate planning procedures when granting of Lamford Bridge January 2020, the Planning Advisory Service ignored 5 of the concerns we raised. You don't know what you've lost till it's gone. TDC breached the Local Government Act in not allowing public into a climate change briefing on the 24th of September. The LGO have noted to me in a communication, having seen the email string, that no sensible and reasonable reason was given for not complying with that. Complaint into Councillor Bullivant's conflict of interest was whitewashed and hidden. The criminal harassment by Councillor Bullivant's son against councillors was not dealt with. Questions raised about Langford Bridge in September 2021 remained unanswered, and the assault on Councillor Malone was ignored. Standards procedures against Councillor Eden, Russell and Cox need to be reviewed. Standards procedures and legal advice to the council in 2018 needs reviewing. Suggestions have been made that a solicitor who was struck off in 2010 was engaged and advised the council. And finally, the council needs to demonstrate it has instructed work on NA3 with all full planning permission in place. It really would be quite something if, after a decade of debate, planning appeals, legal challenges, if this council had commenced work without planning permission in place. The individual cases of maladministration outlined by the Ombudsman in my case are cause for concern on their own. But when combined with the multiple failings in multiple standards cases that demonstrate large-scale abuse of power that have reached the threshold possibly of misconduct in public office or misfeasance in public office, those are criminal offences that carry custodial sentences. It's for those reasons I propose this motion, and that the council appoints commissioners to administer and guide the council until the elections of May 2023. I propose the motion. Thank you.
Beg your pardon. So, can you note the hands, please?
Yeah, that's definitely two-thirds, yeah.
So it's debated today. Right. Who wants to open the debate? Councillor Connett.
Chairman, thank you very much for that. I listen to what Councillor Dawes says, and I can't help but feel that he interprets things as he wishes them to be rather than as they are. On January 19th, I provided a full and unreserved apology, and I did so again last week at the extraordinary meeting. The report to that extraordinary meeting had 3 recommendations, and we brought forward 10, which Council supported and dealt with the issues. Now, I can quite understand that some people think that because the Council agreed to write to the Secretary of State and the Local Government Association for some clarity, that they choose to interpret that as somehow it's sorry but not sorry. And I dealt with that at the time as well and said that's not the case. I have given an unreserved apology. The Council accepts the Ombudsman's report. However, there do appear to be some wider matters of interest to all the local government family which are worthy of being explored. That does not detract from the Ombudsman's report. That appears to be lost in translation, never repeated. The Ombudsman's report was very specific, and that it applied to Councillor Dawes, and it made observations and recommendations with regard to the complaint that Councillor Dawes made to the Ombudsman. Didn't deal with other matters. Other people, so far as I know, from what they have said, not that I know in any other way, have either gone to law or gone to the Ombudsman, and the Ombudsman, for whatever reason, has declined to take up their case or their complaint, or the law courts have determined a different outcome. Last week's meeting, I think Councillor Patch explained what his circumstances were, and he said that he'd gone to the European Court and they had said that they had no jurisdiction. But those were matters that Councillor Patch informed the Council about. I have no knowledge of those things other than what was said. But I do think it's important that we don't allow 4 years of good work to be overrun by well, Chairman, it's interesting that Councillor Dawes is heard in silence, people paying attention, and then people coming in and then laughing when other people are speaking. And this is part of the issue that faces this Council. The issue that faces this Council is that if we were going to invite in the inspectors or the commissioners, we should do it to look at the behaviour of some councillors, the shouting, the swearing, the constant interruptions, the inability to let other people speak, even if you don't like what it is they are saying, and have their free speech. I believe last week we heard that all as councillors we have an enhanced right to freedom of speech, albeit that it has to be moderated with our responsibilities as well. So perhaps I can have freedom of speech uninterrupted today. I think the issues as well is that the Council also need to consider the many things that we have done that serve the community. So we didn't discuss it during the budget debate, but it is worthy of note that there have been a near threefold increase in the number of people taking part in this year's budget consultation, 1,036 up from 355 last year. Now, I'm not excited about 1,036, it should be more, but it shows that more people took part. And actually, the Council undertakes an annual satisfaction survey, and that also shows that there is an improvement in the number of people who are very or fairly satisfied with the way the Council is run. Actually, a small increase, up from just under 47% to just over 48%. Additionally, 81% of respondents are very or fairly satisfied with their local area as a place to live, and that's up from 77%. So the indicators in terms of real people living in Teignbridge and paying their council tax and looking to their council for services is on the change. It's moving in the right direction. None of that detracts, I entirely accept, none of that detracts whatsoever from what Councillor Dawes experienced and what he described to us as a council. And I have apologised once, twice, 3 times. But Councillor Dawes doesn't accept my apology because he chooses to spin on it. And I want to come to another point. I had an email sent to me from a lady called Jane Taylor. Actually, yesterday on the phone, I had a phone call from a news organisation who said they had been sent a copy of that letter. What did I have to say about it, Chairman? I said, well, I don't know. No one's had the courtesy to send it to me. But half an hour later, it did come through from Jane Taylor. And there are some things in there that, again, are that particular spin, which is part of the South Devon Alliance election campaign for May and other things, I'm sure. But the essence of it all is, isn't it, that while I wholly accept the wrong processes used in relation to the standards matters that pertained to Councillor Dawes, I do not accept that this council is a bad organisation. I do not accept that it is a failing organisation. I do not accept that government time, funds and money need to be spent on commissioners here. But if some were commissioners, it should be on the behaviour of a small handful of councillors who have time and time and time again berated, shouted, sworn, lost their temper, and tried to prevent other people speaking, and have behaved in a way which I would describe as intimidatory, bullying, harassing. And they have failed themselves to condemn it or to hold it back. So I'm voting against the motion today because I believe the Council has apologised and gone way beyond that which was in the original recommendations to Council last week. There is a lesson to be learnt, and as members will know, we've also asked that proper processes put in place so there's training in the new council period very early on, jointly for senior leadership team, senior management, and the new councillors joining the council. We can't put right the past, but we can make the future better, Chairman. So I oppose the motion, and I shall be voting against it. Thank you, Chairman.
It's Councillor Liam Malone and it's Councillor Andy Swain after that. I expect one or two more might wish to speak. Catch my eye if you do. Councillor McGregor, okay.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very short and to the point so that nothing can be misinterpreted or spun or any of the stuff that Councillor Connett says is going on. Just please look at the facts. You broke the law. Yeah? You broke the law. You broke your own constitution, and not only did you break your own constitution, you tried to rewrite it so that it agreed, in retrospect, with what you'd done. You employed Karen Triggy, who did that, and then Mr. Woodhead, who did that. You also broke the European, sorry, not the European, the UK Human Rights Act. The Liberal Democrat executive, in conjunction with the officers, broke the UK Human Rights Act. This isn't some frippery that you can ring fence and sweep away and say, oh, well, we've done this and we've done that. It's a catastrophe, okay? And that's not the iceberg, that's the tip of it. There is a lot more to come. There is lies, there is law breaking, there is fraud. You'll hear about it very, very soon. I would take the exit while it's open if I was you. And if I can just say a quick word on all this stuff about how you try and justify breaking the law because we're a bit rowdy and a bit sweary and a bit annoying. Yes, we are. I don't know if you can remember when we first joined this council, we were good as gold for the first 3 months. We put our hands up to go to the toilet for the first 3 months, and then we realised we were getting treated like dog shit. And we represent people who are getting treated like dog shit, and that is why we are a bit rude. And we'll continue to be a bit rude until we are sitting on a council that isn't criminal. Thank you.
Can I ask that the councillor who says they're criminal offences, the police would be very willing to, and we will cooperate. If you wish to report to the police, this council is open and it's transparent, despite your thoughts. It didn't. No.
Mason, we'll do that.
Okay, so now we can't report. All right, I I can't answer that. I don't know. I'm not a Mason. I wouldn't know who is and who isn't. In terms of unlawful, this council didn't act unlawfully. The only person who can make that decision is a court. The Ombudsman can't make that decision. I have a letter in front of me from the Ombudsman saying that he cannot decide, he cannot give a judgment.
You can't case. So that's pointless. That's a non-starter and you know it is.
Just claimed that we are acting criminally.
Yeah,
so a criminal offence is a police thing. If you have a complaint to... Yet again, Councillor Malone...
Right, the next speak...
Uninterrupted.
It would be... We have always tried to investigate whether you appreciate the process or not, whether you like it. The process is there. Please use the process. If you think criminal offences have been have taken place, report it to the police. If you think that we are doing something that need to be done, we will try and process it, or we will process it through the channels that you have. Provide the evidence and we can see it. You've made lots of complaints and you provide very little evidence. So much of it is your perception to my mind, because I don't see evidence in front of me that we can look at. Much of it is perception and views as opposed to evidence and reality from my position.
Right, I want to hear the next... There's three more councillors to hear from. Councillor Swain, Councillor McGregor and Councillor Bullivant. So we'll go with Councillor Swain first, please. And Councillor Hook, you want to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to note the number of comments that have been today about spin and electioneering. There is an election coming up. We all know that. We're all up for election. Can we please not claim that everything we do is marvellous and wonderful and everything everybody else does is just spin and electioneering? Can we please treat each other equally and with respect? Thank you. I have read carefully the Ombudsman's report. Paragraph 19 does clearly say that the Ombudsman does not comment on whether or not anybody's human rights have been breached. It is very important that we read what the report actually says. I also note that maladministration is a word which was used by Councillor Dawes in his introduction, but that word does not appear in the Ombudsman's report, nor does malfeasance, which is a word which was used earlier. These all refer to deliberate wrongdoing. The word that does appear in the report is misfeasance, which refers to accidental wrongdoing. This Council has already agreed to accept the report and implement the recommendations in full. This motion invites the Council to invite Government to come in and take over our operation. This is not a measure that was recommended by the Ombudsman. We should implement the recommendations as they have been set out, not make up our own. So I will be voting against this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Bullivant over here next, and then it's Councillor Hook and Councillor McGregor. I'll put you down.
Thank you. Like most councillors here, go back 4 years, almost the first thing that we heard were declarations from our colleagues that they didn't believe the council worthy of support. They expressed their opinions in terms of this council had no legitimacy because it had had the temerity to approve a planning consent in NA3. Subsequently, there's been a litany of allegations made against myself, my family, other councillors, which every one has been investigated.
No, it hasn't.
Every one has been referred for external examination. I can only speak for myself and my family in this matter. Every one that I've received, of which have been several, have been referred for independent check, validation, and every case the opportunity to present evidence has been offered and refused to be complied with by the people who made those allegations because there is no validation in the claims that they've made, no truth in the allegations that they've made. If one goes back 3 years, we had a scenario in this council where a councillor used his identity badge to admit into the secure area of the offices protesters who went forward to contest and confront officers in an aggressive, unprovoked manner which generated a huge amount of stress to the officers and employees of this council. In seeking to address that and bring the councillor to book, to the extent which is allowed by the process, which enables or requires a councillor who's shown to be in breach of rules to apologise. Nothing else, apologise. And that is the process that the council sought to go through. Yes, because it would be never envisioned in the processes and procedures of this council that a councillor would behave in such a manner. The processes that the council used was subsequently found not to comply with an interpretation of our rules. And 3 years ago, that was recognised by the monitoring officer, the new monitoring officer, and a process put in place to review all of our processes and procedures, to come forward with ideas, suggestions and recommendations that would apply to this council. That is an ongoing process. Yes, there are things we want to change, yes, there are things we want to improve, and yes, we need to recognise that councillors have a duty to behave in a particular way with respect and that respects the Nolan principles. Being truthful, telling the truth, behaving with respect, and listening to others are all part of those things. Hitherto, I'm afraid we haven't been a council that's been able to do that. For that reason, I cannot support this motion, and I ask other councillors to reject it as well. Thank you.
Councillor Hook over here, please.
Thank you, Chair. In my almost 12 years as a district councillor, I don't believe that when I've spoken at a council committee meeting that I've ever interrupted or spoken over someone else when they are speaking, even when that person may have been engaged in personally abusing me. I merely ask that I'm afforded the same courtesy, although I have no intention of personally abusing anyone. I'd like to speak against the notice of motion. As has already been said, there seems to be a desire amongst some to rewrite a different version of what this administration and council agreed in its recommendations at the extraordinary council meeting last week. So let's make it clear again. Councillor Connett has apologised unreservedly for the process errors that were made in the consideration of Councillor Dawes' standards case. We also fully agree with the Ombudsman's recommendations for action and put in place a framework for those actions to be taken forward. It was a proper apology and not half-hearted in any way. So let's clear that up for starters. I'd like to go on to add something else. I hear that some have called on councillors as a collective. Indeed, Jane Taylor did it in her letter, that we have been weak for not standing up to bullying and intimidation and for not speaking up. And you know what? They are right. A lot of us have been afraid to speak up for a long time, years in fact. And I'd like to speak up now. Put simply, and I believe others, have felt intimidated and bullied by NSN councillors. And I treat them as a collective because neither has called out the other. And it is them that we have been too afraid to stand up to. So some context. Back in 2019, NSM were coming into existence and into the public consciousness, mostly via a website. That website had a rogues gallery, which named council officers and existing councillors, some of them here, and one of the council officers, Phil Shears. Now, some will know that I am a supporter of fairly robust and unconventional campaign techniques. Some of the issues we are tackling in our world today, where petitions and nice letters haven't worked, need something more robust in terms of campaigning, something to make those people in power wake up, to take notice, and something that frankly may upset some people. And climate change is one of those issues. Now, I fully accept that NSN wished to robustly put forward their views on, at the beginning, essentially, a single issue of NA3. Many of their views were views held also by us as Lib Dems. I can see that they wanted to use unconventional methods to get noticed in a way that perhaps Walborough Residents Association hadn't managed to achieve. But nowhere in the list of unconventional, robust and effective campaign techniques will you find the personal abuse of people, their unconnected family members, and those that you wish to engage with if and when you were elected. This is what their website did. And it seems that many people don't remember or aren't aware of this website, which was available to view long after the election of May 2019. So in NSN's Rogues Gallery, there was a photo of Phil Shears. Next to it, there was a photo of Phil Shears' daughter, with the words, "Here's a joke for you. What's the difference between Phil Shears and a reality TV star? One is a shameless tart who'll do anything for money. The other is," that word, sorry, I haven't got recorded. "Well, we'd laugh if it wasn't so tragic." There are then two other paragraphs of general... Well, you can finish it later. There are then another two paragraphs of general personal abuse of Phil Shears. Other council officers and councillors suffered the same abuse on their website. I'm sure we can all agree, hopefully, that this is bullying and intimidation in its basest form, deeply hurtful to those on the receiving end. These methods are not effective campaign tools. Is it any wonder that relationships between officers, NSN councillors and other councillors were strained from the outset? Did the NSN councillors seek to apologise or move away from this? Well, they did post this on their website when they finally took down its functionality. So this is a quote. "As an act of good faith in the new executive and the various other people we'll need to wrangle with, we've suspended functionality on this website for the time being. We are not, however, putting our satirical weapons beyond use. Our objective remains the same. The local plan must be revised. And by revised, we mean hung, drawn, quartered, torn apart by horses, its head put on a spike outside Asda, and the remains thrown into a plague pit with the careers of the people who devised it. If that doesn't happen, then this site will be back up with some updates." So no, they've not apologised, but have rather continued their personal abuse and intimidation via social media and council committee meetings, so that most councillors are afraid to speak out against them in case they have the same personal abuse hurled at them and maybe their family members by NSN councillors and their supporters. But what went seriously wrong from there, I would suggest, and I don't know that have knowledge of this, is that without that hurt repaired amongst officers and with ongoing incidents, senior officers at the time lost track of due process in their desire to see these councillors brought to task. That is wrong. Whatever it is that Councillor Dawes is accused of, he deserves to be investigated and judged by fair process, and he wasn't. That is why we issued a full, unreserved apology for the failure of process last week and took on board all of the Ombudsman's recommendations. But I do feel now, today, would also be a good place for NSN councillors to apologise for the unnecessary hurt. And I say unnecessary because it had no effective campaign purpose and was merely gratuitous and deeply hurtful. So the unnecessary hurt and upset they have caused officers and other councillors of this council. I would finally add that I have in my 12 years as a councillor always acted only in the best interests of my residents, and to be continually accused of doing otherwise, I have had to learn to put up with, but I shouldn't have had to learn to put up with that. There has been no evidence forthcoming of any of the planning wrongdoings that have been alleged against this council and councillors with regards to NE3 and Langford Bridge. As has been said, Councillor Malone has made many accusations, but few have been evidenced. And I'm glad I finally was brave enough to speak up. Thank you.
It's over to Councillor McGregor now.
Point of order. I think I ought to be allowed to respond to that.
I'll come back to you in a second. I'm just taking the order. You want to speak next?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to thank Councillor Hook for her quite passionate speech. It is an interesting odyssey over the last 4 years, but I would like to draw a little bit further back to a previous comment by Councillor Connett. And unfortunately remind him that Potts calling the kettle black is not a good look for anybody. He's walking away from this council at the end of April. He's asking for everybody to be investigated, councillors' behaviours, but I would like to draw him back to a meeting in this council, in this particular place, where in response to a motion, Councillor Connett launched into a personal attack on 5 other councillors. And that personal attack involved drawing false allusions to register of interests. So I think it's a very, very dangerous thing for a councillor to call other councillors out on their behaviour when, in fact, his own behaviour, and some of his colleagues as well, has been lacking. So I think it's really important that we should consider this motion in terms of what it's actually requesting, what is the purpose of the motion, and what is the outcome if it is voted through. That's all we're here to do. We're not here to make personal attacks on people, which is another not good look is to criticise members of the public who are in the gallery. So from my perspective, I think it's really important. And I've had somebody question why I back this motion. I think it's really important that we have democratic debate at all times, even on matters we don't necessarily think are particularly nice matters to discuss. But I think they should always be debated. Thank you, Chair.
Well, we're having a very civilised debate today, which I'm very pleased about, and I'm allowing people to speak in the chair. So, from one of the rogues, I was a rogue as well in the Rogues Gallery. I'm going to pass you back to Liam.
Thank you very much. I'm actually relieved to hear Councillor Hook speaking with such passion. The last time I heard her speak with such alacrity was when she shouted that we were a pair of pricks across the chamber, which I fully approve of. Robust debate. I think it's desperate, though. I think it's really, really desperate to go back 5 years to trawl up a website that I put up when I was a private citizen, when I had no intention of standing for this council. It had, not in my wildest dreams did I ever think I would ever be on this council. It was not in my intention. I was a private citizen. I felt the victim of a situation developing around me that seemed wrong, that nobody seemed willing to defend against, and it was a Conservative council back then, that the entire ire of that website was launched against. And I can tell you, we got commendations saying nice one from various Lib Dems, including the councillor's husband. It was only until yes, you did. You said nice one. Yes, you did. Don't sit there and lie. You said nice one. And it was only when I made a comment about Gordon that he turned on us, and that's the way it was. While it was hitting the other side, while it was hitting the Tories, the Lib Dems really quite liked that website. And don't let them tell you otherwise. Now, in terms of what I'm meant to have done, I'm getting really fed up of the way that this Jessica Shears story is being misinterpreted as if it was something appalling. I don't want to talk about Jessica Shears, and I'm sure Mr. Shears doesn't want to either. But I don't think I'm doing her a disservice by saying she's somebody who hasn't shied away from headlines or from photographs. And the photograph I used was supplied by her own PR agency to the Daily Mail.
Look,
I used a picture that was already on the internet, and there was a joke, a short joke. And
Standing orders says when I stand, that councillor shall be quiet.
That is all that happened.
Liam, it's a little bit, I'm getting a little bit personal. Can you please refrain from that?
I am answering a personal issue that Councillor Hook raised. She mentioned Miss Shears, and I'm merely answering her point.
Can we get back to the motion, please? Thank you.
I'm not entirely speaking to the motion. I'm speaking to answer the insane things.
Well, we're here to
said.
make the motion.
Please,
Right.
I know that all I wish to say is this. One point.
Just let him finish and then we'll go to the motion.
I know there's an election coming up. I know that you really want to play the professional victim and pretend that you've been bullied, because that's what Joseph Goebbels said is the best way of propaganda. Bully people whilst claiming to be bullied, harass while claiming to be harassed, and destroy whilst claiming that we are unconstructive, but it won't work. Everyone knows who the bullies are. Everyone knows.
Can I be clear? At no point...
You've broken the law. We haven't.
Sorry?
Those that wish to support... Sorry, Councillor Hook over there. Do you want a quick word before I take the vote on the motion, that those who wish to support it and those that don't? All right, I want to go to the vote in a second now, please. I think...
And so do I, Mr. Chairman. I think that's quite right that you should do so. Somebody's gesticulating on the far side of the room. No. Anyway,
right.
I think there are probably only two people in the room, yourself being one and the gentleman sitting next to you being the other, who understand the significance of saying anybody who's faced the Pontypool front row, as was famous back in the 80s, coming full blast at them, isn't afraid of anybody in this room. If you could face the Pontypool front row in full flight, you can probably face anybody in this room. And I have no fear of anybody in this room, let me assure you. A lot has been said this morning, and clearly a number of rashes and sores are being reopened, perhaps unnecessarily, but I think I should throw in my three penneth as a consequence of being mentioned, and as some of the things that have been said this morning. I was leader, if members recall, for, 18 months or so at the beginning of this administration. It's quite clear, reference has been made to the vile. Vile has got the same letters as evil, incidentally. I just draw that to members' attention. The vile web page that was put up probably, as Councillor Malone says, well before the election, but was still in place for a long time after the election, despite the fact that it was asked to be removed and wasn't. I just add one little bit of new information, as it were, to all that has been said this morning. While leader, I received in my office at least double figures of junior and intermediate officers complaining to me about the bullying and harassment of two members of the Newton Says No group. I sympathised with them, and I told them that the methodology would be to progress any complaints via their lead officer or their head of department, and that was the advice given. I sympathised. One of those, at least, one of those officers was in tears, complaining bitterly about the treatment received at the hands of Councillors Daw and Councillors Malone. That is for the record. I put that on record. Officers perceived that they were being bullied and harassed, and if people, officers or others, perceive that to be the case, then those allegations need to be taken seriously. Now, going back a long time, as a junior teacher, I was given advice by what I suppose was a mentor. He said that bear in mind at all times that you win more with sugar than you do with vinegar. And sadly, far too much vinegar has been spilt in the last 4 years. Much of that due to two councillors who I've already named. It's very sad that they do not see, neither do their supporters see, the bile and the vileness that has come from their mouths and their actions and their stance on so many different issues. This authority may well have done things incorrectly, procedurally incorrectly. I ally myself very strongly to the apologies that have been given. I apologise if there was any error whatsoever on my part. I don't believe there was, but be that as it may, it's not a debating point for the moment. I very much regret that anybody feels that their free speech has been impacted, and I very much regret the comments that have been coming forward over the weeks and months towards officers who, by and large, are not in a position to reply. I think it must be fundamentally wrong to attack people who do not have the ability to reply, to harass and bully those who cannot respond. That is what NSN have been doing. That is what the public need to know. In my opinion, they're unfit for public office, but that's a matter of debate, and that's a matter for the electorate to decide. I rest my case. Let's have more sugar. Let's have less vinegar. Let's try and work together, because we should be working for the common good of the people of this district. And quite clearly, the negativity that has come from a certain quarter does not help that one iota. They failed, and now they're changing their name to avoid that failure. Thank you.
Right, you have the right, Councillor Dawes, to sum up the motion, and then after you've spoken, I'm hearing nothing more than going to the vote. Right, you've got your chance to say...
yes, I'm using my right to reply on the various points that were raised and summing up the motion. So I'd agree well, I appreciate Councillor Jackie Hook's comments, and note that the Newton Says No website was satirical and hard-hitting. It was written by a private individual. It did predate us being councillors. And probably is the sole reason that the standards proceedings started. It was started to settle a personal score, in my opinion. If we go to Councillor Bullivant's point, where he suggested that access was gained into the building using my pass, I'd ask Councillor Bullivant to look at the Ombudsman's report and see whether any complaint was raised about that and whether that formed any part of the complaints against me, because it didn't. And the reason that people wanted to get into that building that day, and these are notes from the Ombudsman's investigator. I'm grateful for you sharing with me the email sent to you on the 24th of September 2019, where you asked the Council to make a climate change briefing open to the public. I agree that these show that you did not receive a reasoned explanation why the Council briefing could not be made open to the public. We have considered and therefore not to address this matter in the report because it would risk losing focus. So that point's taken. In terms of the managing director's points of if it's criminal, take it to the police. What the Ombudsman said in his report, he didn't say it was criminal, did he? He said you acted contrary to the law. And our view is that misconduct in public office has taken place. Those are civil cases. So I think it might be fair to suggest that we are looking at recourse on that front. In terms of Councillor Swain's point, saying that maladministration didn't feature in the Ombudsman's report, clearly he didn't read the definitions, because in the definitions it says, where I use the word fault, it either means service non-delivery or maladministration. Therefore, throughout the report, the word fault means maladministration in the instance when it wasn't talking about a service delivery. In terms of free speech and everyone requiring that, and I'm delighted. Actually, the only good thing that came out today is that we had the debate, and I commend people for actually allowing that debate to happen. But it seems a bit rich for councillors to suggest that free speech is what we have when they constantly suggest that we talk over people. I don't think there's any one time where we've stood up and suggested that a councillor should not be heard, and that's happened on multiple occasions. In terms of behaviour, I know Councillor Gordon Hook's points where he made some very serious allegations about bullying and harassment. None of those, there were no complaints made against me. The local government ombudsman said there were no complaints. And in terms of Councillor Malone, his position is exactly the same. There are no complaints raised against him. I would invite anyone to bring those forward if they indeed existed, but I don't believe they do. What does exist is that we were subject to criminal harassment that was dealt with by the police. It was taken to the police, and they did speak to the individual involved and warned him not to do it again. The failure of this council was not to do anything about it themselves. So, summing up, we do have systemic failings. I do note that in the report you had 10 points, and you were so concerned by the report, you've decided to write to the Secretary of State to suggest maybe the Ombudsman report is so wide-reaching that it affects all of the counties, all of the councils around the country. But what you haven't managed to do is a little bit of introspectiveness, is to think that if it affects councils around the country, then maybe it affects other cases and other conducts that have happened and other procedural failings that have happened within this council, within this tenure. There is a long list. I will send them out. There will be evidence. And if this council doesn't do anything about it, then they will be subject to a civil claim against this council and the individuals concerned. Thank you.
Right, thank you for that. Right, we go to the vote. Those in favour of the motion, please.
That's 4, Chair.
4. Those against the motion.
The motion's failed.
Any
Chair.
abstentions? Right, we move to the final. Sorry, what's wrong?
I think you finished now, Chair.
No, there's council questions and there's none.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. So on that note, that concludes the meeting, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.